Hi, I'm Laura.
And I'm Joe.
And this is Crime Divers.
Hello everybody, welcome to today's episode.
Hello.
So, before we start...
Oh, yeah. I always like that before we start.
I'm having words.
Oh, okay.
Right. Okay, so, we have a TikTok account now.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So, I put out on our episodes the Armed and Dangerous. Was it Armed and Dangerous it was called?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The one about Dale Cregan.
Mm-hmm.
And I put up a post just advertising that. And it's had nearly 14,000 views on it. But there's some comments on it that I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to address these comments on the podcast and just to let everybody know that it's not all right to make these comments. We appreciate constructive criticism.
Absolutely.
We appreciate any... like sort of opinions and things like that, or, if there's anything that we've missed out on the case, things like that. But on this one, I'd put a picture of the 4 victims on the TikTok, and I'm not going to name names, but, for instance, this woman, commented saying, "I like it when they get what's coming to them. Give this guy a medal." And that was about the 2 police women. That was about
was it?
Nicola and Fiona.
Uh-huh.
That was about the 2 police women.
Uh-huh.
She was abusing, and there was other comments about her calling the police pure shit and everything like that. That's not acceptable.
No, it's not.
And there was a guy that commented. Hang on, let me find it. Why are you... This was directed at us, saying, "Why are you putting a picture of the 2 men like they were innocent bystanders? They were all druggies. Don't act like they were nice." I'm sorry, but these guys, even if they were druggies, I don't know if they were. But even if they were druggies, so what? They didn't deserve to be murdered.
Well, exactly.
And... So you're saying that anybody who takes drugs deserves to be murdered?
Yeah, exactly.
And it said as well, don't make out that they were nice. I never made out that they were nice because I didn't have enough information about them.
No.
I basically stated the facts as I researched them. I don't know them personally, so I and I didn't read anybody's opinions on them, so I don't know if they were nice or not. I don't know if they were innocent or not.
But they were victims.
They were innocent victims, as in they were murdered. And I did actually reply to that comment, at first I did, saying that doesn't mean to say that they didn't deserve to be murdered or something like that. But then I actually thought, you know what, no, I'm just going to turn off the comments for this because this guy has commented a couple of times. So I actually knew that if I said something back, then he would just retaliate to that and it would have got into drama, and that I'm not about that. I'm not in a drama.
No, we're not in a drama at all.
No, I mean, this podcast, as we said before, it's a platform for making, awareness, for, giving victims voices, all the rest of it. Neither of us are getting into arguments with people online.
Absolutely not.
About anything.
I have no interest in that whatsoever. As Jill said, I'm happy to receive constructive criticism, because at the end of the day, we're not perfect.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't always get things right. You might miss out things or whatever, and that's completely fine. I even don't mind people's opinions.
We're happy to interact with people, but not people like that.
No, exactly.
To me, that's a troll.
Yeah.
That is trolling. Because, I mean, the guy did comment at us, but a lot of the other comments that were on it, they were talking about the case in an abusive way. They were, saying, as I said, that these people deserve to die, that police, the police deserved it, all that kind of stuff, and that's not acceptable. And I didn't want, the reason why I wanted to point it out on the podcast as well was basically that if people had noticed out of our decent listeners, our nice listeners, if they had saw that and maybe thought, well, why didn't we comment back before I turned off the comments?
Yeah.
I didn't want you to think that we were condoning that and letting people say things like that on our social media.
No.
I was trying to ignore some of them to start off with, and then eventually I just decided, no, I'm not having any more of this.
And to be honest, as we know with TikTok, I mean, the people that view it, I mean, they aren't necessarily listeners, they are just people scrolling through.
Yeah.
You know, so they've just thought, oh, I'll have a little comment on this post or whatever and had their 2 pence worth, you know. So we know that they're not probably genuine listeners.
Well, actually, I don't want listeners like that.
No, not particularly.
So if you are going to listen to us and post stuff like that, just don't bother. Just jog on and...
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I will not condone any sort of abuse.
We don't... trolling, we don't entertain.
No, we're not going to entertain it. So, as I said, I did answer back, and then I thought, no, actually, delete that. I'm not going to get into it. And that would be the case. So if anybody wants to get in contact with us, please do. But just nothing abusive.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so even if it's a sort of a negative thing, I mean, that is totally fine.
But you don't have to say it in a nasty way.
As long as it's in a constructive way and stuff like that, you know, there's fine. But, you know, victims on our podcast, whatever they did in their personal lives, whether it be right or wrong, you know, doesn't necessarily mean they're still victims and they've been murdered. So, and
then their comment, I mean, because as I say, like on that TikTok, it wasn't us that they were commenting on. I mean, I got asked why I posted the picture.
Yeah.
But it was the victims that they were talking about.
Exactly.
And no, that's disgusting. I'm sorry. These people died. These people got murdered.
Mm-hmm. And like I say, regardless of what they did in their personal life, whether it be right or wrong, it's not for us to judge that. You know, we're just telling the story that, you know, we've researched and they were victims in that story. So, you know.
So they're victims. Leave them alone and just don't bother trolling anybody.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, there's always going to be people that are doing it. You're never going to stop it, but...
No, but I just wanted everybody to know that we don't condone that and we will not get into that. We will not... You know, if you do comment in any abusive or negative way like that, you will either get blocked, the comments will be turned off.
Yeah.
You know, we're not
interested. You know, we're not interested in that, sadly. Not so sadly, but...
That's all we wanted to say, really. So... Yeah.
Yes, but anyway, on to today's episode. Yeah. Let's move on to this. And where in the world are we?
We are in England and UK.
Okay, and what's the title?
From Boyfriend to Killer.
Oh.
So that kind of gives it away.
Yes, that does give it away, but let's dive in.
So, I'll start off by saying the girl's surname, not entirely sure how to pronounce it.
Oh my god.
Well, I would have pronounced it, right, her name is Ellie. So it's Ellie Gould. As in Ellie Goulden.
Yeah.
That's how it's spelled, as in Ellie Goulden, but it's just Ellie Gould.
Uh-huh.
But when I heard somebody speaking about her, they pronounced it Gould. Ellie Gould. I think it's Ellie Gould.
Yeah, because I think, even though people say Ellie Golden, I think it is actually Ellie Goulden.
Oh, is it?
I think that's maybe how her name is actually pronounced.
Okay, well, I do apologise if it's wrong. Yeah, but I think we'll go with Gould. Yeah, so Ellie Gould was born on the 6th of February 2002 to her parents Matthew and Carol, and they lived in Wiltshire in England. In 2019, so this is a really recent one.
Oh, this is quite recent, yeah.
Yeah, Ellie was 17, and she was a Year 12 sixth form student at Hardenhuis School in Chippenham, and she was studying for her A-levels. She had a passion for horse riding and she would take part in local equestrian events. She was a bubbly, happy girl and she competed in cross-country racing. I don't know how anybody could be happy and bubbly and take part in cross-country racing.
Oh god, I used to hate cross-country at school.
I used to walk and like, I think we used to go and have a cigarette.
That does not surprise me in the slightest. No.
You used to just stroll around.
I think running is literally like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it.
God,
but I certainly hate it. I mean, I liked running when I was playing a sport like hockey or whatever.
Yeah,
but just solely running, don't like it. Don't get
it. You only run if somebody's chasing you.
That's a good plan.
So, and she wanted to join the mounted police and study psychology at university. So she had plans. Mm-hmm. So one day in January 2019, she got home from school and told her mum that a boy had asked her out. She was all excited about it, and her mum was happy as well because it was actually somebody who was in Ellie's friendship group.
Oh, right, okay.
And they'd all known each other since Year 7, so had to look that up because it's different in England to what it is in Scotland. So I think it's about 11 or 12.
Right.
I think maybe like sort of first year at high school, I think.
Okay.
So this boy was called Tom Griffiths. I can never say that name.
That's hard.
Griffiths. And he knew sons of good friends of Ellie's parents. Do you get that? Ellie's parents had good friends, and he was friends with their son.
Right, okay.
So they kind of, like, they all kind of knew each other.
Yeah, they all knew each other, yeah. Okay.
So Ellie's mum thought, you know, he was a good choice for a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So Tom was a bright, talented sportsman, and Ellie had fancied him for quite a while, and they'd had an on-off thing, is what one of her friends described it as, for years.
Okay.
So,
fair enough.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not quite sure. Maybe they were just kind of hooking up now and again, or I don't know.
Yeah, they were.
But it was only when they were 17 that actually he asked her out. It turned into a relationship.
Right, okay.
So, Ellie's mum, Carol, said that he seemed like a quiet lad, nothing remarkable about him, and her husband were a bit surprised. She didn't explain why, but I thought maybe he just didn't seem like her type because she was happy and bubbly and he was a bit quieter.
Yeah, fair enough.
And although originally her mum had thought he was a good choice, once they actually got to know him a bit better, you know, they were kind of a bit, not so sure.
Right.
But you know, our parents thought, you know, it's her first boyfriend, like, it'll probably fizzle out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it looked like they were right, because it wasn't long before priorities shifted for Ellie, and Tom just became a less important part of her life. She had her exams coming up, and she realised, like, she didn't really want or need a boyfriend in her life.
Mm-hmm.
She decided that her friends and her education were more important to her at that time in her life.
Yeah, well, I get that. That's fair enough.
So she ended the relationship on the 2nd of May 2019. So they'd only been together since January.
Mm-hmm.
So it was only 5 months.
Yeah.
And she'd actually told her friends that she felt relieved and free. So it must have been a bit of a weight on her shoulders, kind of a bit of burden, like.
Yeah.
So the next morning, so that's the 3rd of May. It was a Friday, and Ellie didn't have to go to school in the morning because she didn't have any lessons. So she decided to stay home and revise and then go to school in the afternoon because, in Scotland we don't go to school on a Friday afternoon.
No, we get half days.
Yeah, we get half days on a Friday, but obviously in England they must go to school on full days on a Friday.
They do. Although I do believe that, I don't know if I'm right to say that, but I think that our nephews maybe had full days and they're crossing Fife, and I thought.
Alright, okay. Where we live,
I might be wrong. I might be wrong on that one because I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like that might have been.
I have no idea.
Anyway, where we are, yes, you get half days.
get half days at school, which has no relevance to anything either.
No, not really.
Because
we're not even at school.
Okay, I know. Can I even remember being at school? Nah. That's a long, long time ago now. So sorry, I'm also so she was going to go to school in the afternoon. So she got up and had her breakfast, and the plan was that she was going to revise until about 12 o'clock at lunchtime when her friend Ellie, which is confusing because there's two Ellies.
Oh, two Ellies.
Yeah. So her friend Ellie was going to come and pick her up and drive to school. How have they got cars at this age?
Well, because you can pass your test when you're 17.
How do you afford a car when you're at school?
Well, my friends, because I left school in 4th year, so it would have been, in the
15, 16.
So it would have been in the 5th, 6th year when you were driving. But yeah, one of my friends, she passed her test and was driving.
And did somebody buy her the car?
Mm-hmm.
Well, exactly, that's what I'm saying. Like, how can they afford the cars? Obviously, their parents, they must have grown up in a wealthy area and their parents are buying them cars.
I mean, it wasn't the most amazing car, but, you know, it was a car.
Did your parents buy you a car?
Well, yes, but no, because...
No, you had to pay for it.
Yeah, but Dad, he did buy it, and then I had to pay him for it.
That's different. Well, no, that could have happened there, I suppose. Eh?
Yeah, because I had to pay him a monthly payment for it.
I just get annoyed, because I'm like, when I was 17, none of my friends had cars. We all had to get buses everywhere.
It's a generational thing.
So her friend Ellie was kind of picking up at 12 and drive her to school because they both had a history lesson together. So that afternoon, Ellie's mum Carol, she was at work when her husband Matthew called her. It was absolutely hysterical, and he says, "You've got to come home, like Ellie's had an accident." So Carol rushed out of work and she jumped in the car. And she just thought that Ellie must have cut herself or something because she knew that Matthew couldn't stand the sight of blood.
Right, okay.
So that's probably why it sounded hysterical because she's bleeding, oh my god, you have to come home.
Come home, deal with it.
Which would probably be me because I'm the same.
Yeah.
But then Carol, as she was driving home, she kept thinking why is Ellie at home?
She should be at school.
She should be at school. And she shouldn't have been home till about 4 o'clock. Because I think this was about 3 o'clock, I think. And she shouldn't have been home till about 4. So obviously all sorts of things were running through her head as she was driving home. And she even pulled over for a police car which went like flying past with its lights and its siren on, but it never clicked at that
police car was going to her house.
It was going to her house, yeah. So, yeah, Matthew had got home about 3 p.m. He had walked into the kitchen and found Ellie. She was lying on the floor, face down in a big pool of blood, and she was holding a knife in her right hand, and it was made to look like she'd injured herself with the knife. I'll kind of tell you about that later. So when Carol pulled into the street, there were police cars everywhere. Look, they were just abandoned. There was like nowhere for her to park because it was just...
Police cars everywhere.
Yeah. So she just kind of jumped out of her car, abandoned it, and ran up to the end of her driveway. Do you like how I'm doing all these actions with my hands? I do it all the time, don't I?
I know, we both do it, to be fair.
And like, so she ran up to the end of the driveway. Matthew was just standing there sobbing, and she's like, "What happened?" And he just said, "Ellie's died." And she was like, just can't believe it. Like, there's an ambulance in the driveway, so she was thinking it'll be all right. Like, that the paramedics are here.
They're gonna sort it out.
They'll do something. So she just stood there stunned, like she just couldn't believe it. But unfortunately, Ellie had been lying there for about 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
And her injuries were so bad that even a skilled surgeon would have struggled to save her life. Oh. That's how bad the injuries were. Dear. So, but obviously, she didn't know this at that point. Carol and Matthew, they still had no idea what had happened. So they were taken at the back of a police car, and they were just sort of asked who Ellie's friends were, what her plans had been for that day, about their family life. And they quickly came to realise this was most likely not a suicide, but it was a homicide.
Yeah.
But they didn't actually share that with Ellie's parents
at that point.
At that point, yeah. Carol and Matthew still thought that Ellie had just had some kind of accident.
Right.
So Carol thought that maybe she had just kind of climbed up on something to get something out of a cupboard.
Yeah.
And then she's like fell back and hit her head. Or another thought was she maybe thought she'd maybe got electrocuted with a knife in her hand, like she'd been at the toaster. And, and she fell backwards.
Yeah.
But Matthew kind of said, well, no, that's not right, because there was just too much blood.
Yeah, I was going to say, there wouldn't be any... If she'd be electrocuted, there probably wouldn't really be any blood, would there?
Yeah, but she had the knife in her hand, so she could have stabbed herself. Yeah, but she hadn't seen Ellie, so obviously all sorts were going through her mind. But Matthew was like, nah, there's too much blood. So they were struggling to come to terms with her death, which I'm sure wasn't helping, not knowing what had happened to her.
Exactly.
So obviously the police started investigating, and a neighbour said that they'd saw someone call at the Gould's house earlier in the day, and while they didn't see their face, they could see that it was male. Mm-hmm. So when the police started the hunt for the mystery male, Carol and Matthew were taken to the police station, and that's when they were told that they were treating Ellie's death as murder. Mm-hmm. So even then, they just couldn't believe it, because it was, Ellie had been such a lovely girl, she'd had no enemies. Mm-hmm. They just couldn't believe who would want to hurt her. So police had gone straight to Ellie's friends, and that's how they found out that she had a boyfriend. And they wanted to know as much as possible from the friends about the boyfriend, and just about their relationship and what he was like.
Oh yeah,
and, they obviously told them that it ended and all that kind of stuff. So, so they went to Ellie's house. Ellie's friend Ellie. Yeah, friend. We'll just call her friend Ellie.
Friend Ellie, yeah.
So they went to friend Ellie's house, who was the one who was meant to pick her up to take her to school that afternoon. But she had said that Ellie had texted her and said not to bother picking her up, and that she was just going to stay at home and revise.
I was just going to ask, where did she think she was, considering she was meant to be picking her up? But yeah.
Well, she'd got a text message from her just saying that...
did she send that text message?
Okay, we've been doing too much true crime that you're asking questions now. You never used to ask that, stuff like that. So she said that she was just going to stay home and revise. So she also revealed that Tom had been messaging her saying that he was upset about him and Ellie, but he said that he'd said to friend Ellie that they were going on a break, that him and Ellie were going on a break. He didn't actually say that they had ended.
Oh, right, okay.
So I don't know if that's what he actually thought or if he was just saying that. I don't know. He said that he'd been nervous and anxious about everything lately, and that he'd been hurting himself by scratching his neck quite bad.
Oh, I'm going to ask another question. I wonder if that was an excuse, because he's obviously got some wounds on his neck.
You're getting quite clever, aren't you?
Well, to be honest, the title gives it away, saying boyfriend turned murderer,
But I was just pointing out, because he does he points out to a few different people that his harming himself, basically, which, you know, is obviously just his excuse.
Yes, defensive wounds.
So Tom was the person of interest in Ellie's murder, and the police needed to find him quickly. So when they did catch up with him, the first thing they noticed were the injuries on his neck, and they looked fresh. Mm-hmm. He also matched the description of the person who the neighbour had seen knocking at the Gould's door, and he was arrested and taken to the police station. So Ellie's friends showed police messages that Tom had sent to a group chat on the day of the murder, and they said, quote, "I think everyone's noticed that I've been down lately, and I need to tell you why. Me and Ellie are going to go on a break and see how things go after exams. As well as this, my dad has cancer and my nan has been in hospital having heart problems. I've been so stressed lately and I don't know how to cope with it. I've been scratching myself around my neck area, and as this group has kind of become my best friends, I don't know who else to talk to. I'm going to see the school nurse now and explain everything that's been happening." End quote. Mm-hmm. But he actually didn't say, "I'm going to see the school nurse now," because he actually said he was going to see, because I saw it written, so the name was blanked out. It was the school nurse's name.
Yeah.
And he even sent a picture of himself to this chat, and the scratches were visible. And he was... And
he's just basically planting the seed, like...
Yeah. So he told them that he'd been self-harming.
Yeah. Which I'm assuming he has not.
I think not. So these messages were sent after Ellie's murder, but before she had been found. So it's interesting to see that he keeps pointing out the scratches on his neck.
Yeah. Try to cover his tracks, isn't he?
So of course the friends in the chat were saying, like, "Oh, I hope you're okay, you know, you can talk to us, we're always here for you," and stuff like that, because they had no idea that, you know, what had happened.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I'm saying that now.
But of course it didn't take long for the news of his arrest to get out. And even then his friends couldn't believe that he had done it, or if he had done it, then they just assumed it must have been an accident, you know, that he's maybe they've been having an argument and he's pushed her and she's banged her head or something like that, because I don't think they knew they didn't know the details of the murder, I don't think, just that she had died. So I keep scratching it. I have a head injury and I keep scratching it.
Well, don't.
I walked into a door, just in case anybody's wondering.
Because she's stupid.
It's still sore. Luckily I don't have a bruise though. So when Tom sat down for his police interview, the first thing he said was that he had been at home studying all day, and was his girlfriend okay, because he hadn't heard from her. So when asked about his day, he said that his mum had took him to school, but he didn't want to go as he wasn't feeling very well. So once she dropped him off, he got the bus back home. His mum unexpectedly came home at 11:15, and he hid in the wardrobe, so she didn't know that he was there. So she must have only been there for a little while, and then she's left again.
Right.
So she must have just popped back for something. And Tom said that after that, he spoke to a neighbour and told him that he was upset and stressed about his exams, and that a family member was suffering with ill health, and that he was self-harming. The neighbour was questioned, and they said that they remembered seeing scratch marks on his neck. Tom then asked the neighbour for a lift back to school, and he went to see the school nurse and explained that he was self-harming. He then called his mum, and she came to pick him up from school and took him home. So that's his account of what happened that day.
Right.
So of course the police didn't believe him, and they questioned him more, and they analysed his digital footprint, because, you know, it's 2019.
Well, yes. You can be tracked with your phone and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think people have realised that. Some people haven't realised that yet.
No.
So they downloaded the data from Tom's smartphone, and they could see that around about 10:50 that morning, the phone disconnected from his house's Wi-Fi.
So that
and it didn't reconnect again until an hour later. So obviously he wasn't at home, like he said. So the location services were activated on his phone, and they could see that at 10:53 he arrived at Ellie's house, and he left at 11:51. So he was there for just under an hour.
Right.
So that's like, 58 minutes he was there for. But that wasn't enough to charge Tom for Ellie's murder.
Right.
So they had to keep investigating to find out exactly what happened that day. So the police got some CCTV footage from a bus company who had dashcam footage of a silver Ford Fiesta, which they identified as Tom's car. Because obviously driven there to Ellie's.
Yeah.
So there was a digital footprint of his movements, so they knew that he was lying about where he had been that morning. He said he had been at home all morning, but yet he had disconnected for the Wi-Fi for that hour, and there was also a period of 18 minutes where he disconnected from the Wi-Fi as well.
Right.
About an hour after he'd returned home from his mum dropping him at school.
Right.
So this must be because search teams found a black bin liner a 9-minute walk away from Tom's house that contained a blood-stained t-shirt, cloths, napkins and towels, which were all covered in blood as well.
So 9 minutes
that
there,
must have been the 18
9
minutes
back.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So they were all sent for forensic examination, but it was still far from clear what Tom's motive for killing Ellie could have been. A relationship psychologist said, quote, "I wonder if there was a sense of loss of faith in the friendship groups with his family, with her family, with the community, and all that kind of image would have been shattered by being dumped." And in his mind, that would have been in his mind, it would have been like shattered. The image would have been shattered, but being dumped.
But yeah, becoming a murderer is a better image to have.
I know.
I mean...
At this point, a 17-year-old, this might be his everything. You know, like the world revolves around this relationship and whatnot. And this is how I see myself, and I need to restore my pride, my sense of self, how hurt I feel. I don't like how you made me feel, and you're going to pay for it. End quote.
Yeah.
So that's what she thinks that he'd been going through his mind.
Well, potentially, yeah.
So in the early hours of the following Monday morning, the police received news from the lab that blood on Tom's shoes that they took away from his house was Ellie's. Armed with damning forensic evidence, police charged 17-year-old Tom with Ellie's murder. So the family knew the details of her death, but it wasn't public knowledge before the trial. And people actually assumed that it could have been an accident, because they still didn't know yet, that he's pushed her, she's hit her head.
Yeah.
No one, but obviously by the time the trial came, then... nobody could believe that he'd done it on purpose.
Yeah.
But he stabbed her to death. And it obviously wasn't an accident, as he tried to clean up the scene afterwards.
Try to make it look like she'd done it to herself.
Yeah. So I was just going to tell you. Tom had strangled Ellie, and then once she was unconscious, he had stabbed her. So he'd already strangled her, and then he stabbed her 13 times in the neck. After stabbing Ellie, Tom had cleaned his shoes at the scene, and he'd cleaned the knife, then wiped it on an apron to try and get rid of his DNA. So he knew what he was doing. He was cleaning up after himself.
Totally.
If that had been in a total fit of rage, then I wouldn't have thought he would have been so...
Well, he would have just left
careful
things,
about everything, yeah.
He would just be like in a hurry to get away or something.
So then he had because he'd done that, and then he had texted the other Ellie, who was... friend Ellie, sorry, I was supposed to call her.
Yes, friend Ellie.
He had texted friend Ellie, who was supposed to be picking Ellie up to take her to school. At 11:45, he used Ellie's phone to text friend Ellie and tell her not to pick her up as she was going to stay home
told
in
you
her
it was
bags.
him.
Yeah, but Carol, the mum, doesn't believe that he knew Ellie's passcode for her phone though, so she thinks that once she was dead, Tom used her finger for the fingerprint recognition. That's just awful. I don't like that. That's awful.
No, that is awful.
And remember, like I said, that she had a knife in her hand. Well, Tom had put that knife in her hand, lifted her arm, and he reinserted the knife into one of the wounds in her neck to make it look like she'd done it to herself. When I said before it looked like she'd done it herself, you were probably just assuming she was just holding a knife, which is what you would think. No, he'd actually went that one step further and inserted it into a wound.
Oh my god.
That's awful, isn't it?
That's just despicable.
Yeah.
I like that word
horrendous.
today.
What?
So I like that word today. I've said that a few times.
Have you?
Despicable.
Your dictionary for breakfast, did you?
Yes.
On a big there now, yes.
Sorry. I needed one.
So at a plea hearing on the 29th of August 2019, Tom pled guilty, and Tom gave a different version of events to what he had said before. So he's changed his story now.
Oh, right, okay.
So he said that he drove the car to Ellie's house and they were there with the intention of studying. Because he's making out that they're still boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
Because she wouldn't want to be studying with him because she dumped him the night before.
Exactly, I'm pretty sure she was going to school. As she was planning to.
So they studied for a while, then they started to argue about family members. I don't know, that's just what he said.
Right.
And it was at that point that Tom said that he suffered from a degree of amnesia convenient that, isn't it? He remembered strangling Ellie, then he lost his memory.
Right, okay.
And then he came to when Ellie had been stabbed.
So
Convenient.
He did. So,
Angela Mutanda, the relationship psychologist, said, quote, blind rage can lead you to forget. The logical brain gets pushed out of the way, while the adrenaline has to have a way out, which is usually in violence. However, the fact that after that he put her hand on the knife and he used her fingerprint to send messages is something quite different.
Yeah.
This is not amnesia. This is cold, calculated planning, end quote, which is exactly what I thought.
Yep, I agree.
So Tom was remanded in custody to await sentence. Reporting restrictions were lifted that had prevented Tom from being named because remember he'd been 17.
Of course, yeah.
But they actually lifted the restrictions, so he was allowed to be reported. His name was. So according to the recorder Peter Blair QC, the restrictions were lifted because his crime was, quote, extremely grave. His sentence and hearing was on the 8th of November 2019, and even though he was weeks away from being an adult, he was sentenced as a child, which I was really annoyed at.
But yeah, the other episode that I've done, the people were tried as adults and they were younger.
Yeah, the one that hasn't been published yet.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Spoiler. Just ignore her. That's the next episode.
Sorry, forgetting.
So Tom was sentenced to life with a tariff of 12.5 years. Ellie's parents tried to appeal the sentence as they felt it was too lenient, but despite loads of support, the appeal was turned down. So the lead investigating officer did say that as a police officer, he felt that the sentence was appropriate and within the sentencing guidelines, but as a father, he was devastated for the family. So, it was appropriate.
And
because he was tried as a child.
Yeah, I get that. But morally, you think he probably should have got a lot more.
He was weeks off being 18, off being an adult, so...
Yeah.
But Carol said that one positive thing that their barrister said about it all was that when Tom comes up for parole, they will look back at the crime and he went from 0 to 100 in terms of violence for no reason, which makes him such a dangerous individual, so his parole may be denied. Hopefully.
Well, hopefully.
So Ellie's friends began a campaign to have compulsory self-defence lessons taught in schools, as they felt that even just a basic knowledge of self-defence could have saved her life. So the campaign was backed by a local MP, and on the 12th of March 2020, the matter was debated in the House of Commons. The Department of Education ruled out making self-defence lessons compulsory for schools, but they agreed to issue guidelines and ask head teachers if they felt self-defence classes were right for their schools.
Right, okay.
So it could be taught, but it would rely very much on the age and the maturity of the pupils and their understanding that it could only be used in emergencies.
Yeah.
So Carol campaigned for the introduction of Ellie's Law that would enable young offenders to be treated more like adults when convicted of serious crimes such as murder. In August 2020, the Daily Telegraph reported that the Secretary of State for Justice was reviewing the sentence and process and was considering a graded approach depending on the age of the offender, which I think is totally right.
Yeah.
So on the 9th of March 2021, so really recent, just a few months ago, the Police Crime Sentencing in Courts Bill was introduced, and that allows the law to treat future teenage killers like adults, thus increasing the minimum sentence they can be given to as much as 27 years.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
That is much better, because the way I see it is, how can you try an 11-year-old, say an 11-year-old's murdered somebody and a 17, nearly 18-year-old's murdered somebody, they don't have the same maturity, the same state of mind.
Exactly.
So I don't think that they can be given the same sentence.
No, I agree.
So I think this grading thing...
The fact that it was a few weeks of adulthood, he should have been tried as an adult.
Exactly. So that's a good thing to come out of that.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I think he should have been tried as an adult.
Yeah, I agree.
So in future, as I said, that was only March, that's only a few months ago, so in future that should be the case.
It could happen, depending on the crime. Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's fair enough.
So there you go. I actually forgot we were recording there, and I was you're going home now, so I was going to say, right, I'll see you later then.
No, we're still on. We're still on. I can't go just yet. We've got to wrap it up.
Right, okay, so thank you to everybody for listening. If you would like to support us financially on Patreon, It's patreon.com/crime divers, and you get bonus episodes and you can get some freebies, and you know, we're working on building up to be something a bit better, aren't we?
Yes.
It's kind of in the pipe. We've got things in the pipeline.
Yes, we have.
You could buy us a coffee, buyacoffee.com, buymeacoffee.com.
Or leave us a tip.
Or leave us a tip on goodpods.com, I think it's called. I'm not very good at plugging us. If you want to follow us on any of our social medias, I'll put that in the show notes.
And if for some strange reason, like I always say, you like listening to us, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, review. Thanks for listening.
Bye.